Pioneer brand canola with Optimum Gly, the highest yielding glyphosate-tolerant trait on the market. What's next in canola happens here.
It's time for RealAg Radio on Rural Radio Channel 147 on Sirius XM. RealAg Radio and RealAgriculture.com is your home for insight and analysis of the issues that are impacting your farm business. Let's get real and get connected with RealAg Radio. Welcome to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM. Shaun Haney, your host here on this Friday edition of the show. Thanks so much, everybody, for making RealAg Radio and Rural Radio 147 a big part of your workday. Also, a big shout out to everybody listening out there on the RealAg Radio podcast. Well, today we've got a great show for you. We've got a RealAg Issues panel. We'll be joined by Lyndsey Smith and Kelvin Heppner of RealAgriculture, as well as Meagan Murdoch from Hill and Knowlton out of Toronto, Ontario, will be with us. We're going to talk about a number of different issues. We've got a jobs report out of Canada. We've got, there was a 282 rally this week on the Hill. We've got issues on the greatest gap between the upper class and the middle class from an income standpoint or wealth standpoint. The greatest in I think since 1999, according to a new report. We've also got a PBO report out on the carbon tax as well. So lots of stuff to discuss today on the program. We'll also have a beef market update for you here today. Anne Wasko, the Gateway Livestock Exchange, will be with us. We're going to talk about steer carcass weights, basis levels in Canada, not on the improving side, and where are the cash markets overall in Canada and the U.S. So lots to chat about there with Anne. Now, if you have any feedback, we'd love to hear from you. Send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. You can also find us across all the different social media platforms as Real Agriculture, or you can call the RealAg feedback line. That number is 855-776-6147. Of course, Real Agriculture has a full portfolio of podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. You can find us all over the place. This program is great. I'm a bit biased. I think it's fantastic, but we have a lot of different programs that you might be interested in. The Agronomist, Mind Your Farm Business, Ruminating with RealAg, RealAg Markets, The Truth About Ag, that and a whole lot more. You can also check out the Real Agriculture YouTube channel, I should say, as well, where we have all of that content in video form. Speaking of the Agronomist, remember, this is Thanksgiving weekend in Canada, so there'll be no Agronomists on Monday night, okay? But you can find the whole archive, like I said, wherever you get your podcasts or on our YouTube channel. Okay, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to get going with the beef market update with Anne Wasko, the Gateway Livestock Exchange. Look forward to hearing how we're making out in those cattle markets right after this.
Your Co-op Grow team are your local experts because we live here too. Our agronomic specialists stay up to date with the latest research and technology to help support your entire farm operation. Talk to our team for advice tailored to your farm's needs. We have recommendations to help you optimize your crop yield and quality while enhancing the health of your land. Co-op, we're all growing together. Here for your farm, here for your family. Learn more at coop.crs/farm.
We're going to talk to Jack Legg, SGS's Business Development Manager. Let's talk about some of the testing that SGS Guelph does.
Yes, so at our facility, we're predominantly testing for nutrients. So soil testing for fertility to manage crop production. Same in the greenhouse world, but they're testing water and the soilless growing media. And then the livestock side of things, we're testing the feeds and forages and feed ingredients to optimize nutrition and maximize, or at least try to optimize growth and production for the farmer. But SGS also has many different labs in the network, so we can help out from an environmental standpoint. Maybe it's heavy metals testing or contaminants. We've got seed testing capabilities.
Congratulations on the 40-year anniversary of the SGS Guelph Lab. Quite an accomplishment. And you can find out more about SGS to help you elevate your business by calling 1-800-952-5407. Time for the beef market update here on RealAg Radio. But first, the best answer for agronomically effective dual nitrogen protection is Super U Premium Fertilizer from Koch Agronomic Services. To learn how this ready-to-use granular fertilizer protects nitrogen and boosts efficiency, go to kochag.ca. That's kochag.ca. Let's get rolling with the beef market update. We're talking to Anne Wasko, the Gateway Livestock Exchange. Anne, how are you doing?
I am good today, Shaun. How about you?
I'm doing really well. Hey, happy Thanksgiving.
Yes, same to you.
Yeah. Now, you're the beef lady, but are you doing a turkey this weekend?
You're not going to go there, seriously?
You're not?
No, we've got lots of nice beef in the freezer for this one.
Prime rib. Here we go, baby. Okay. Oh, well, okay, before we get to the markets, are you a barbecuer or a smoker?
Oh, it depends on what we're doing. So both. We have both on the deck.
Nice. Yeah, you got to have that versatility for sure. You got to have that versatility.
Yeah.
Okay, what's happening this week in the cash market?
Well, in the U.S., the South looks like most of the trade's going to come in anywhere from steady to one higher. So Texas, Kansas, 186 to 187. And it certainly firmed up as we went through the week. The North, we're going to call it 187 live and 296 stressed. And that's pretty much steady with last week's trade. So steady to a buck higher, so, a good tone. I think, the news of the week was certainly the jump in the cutout, that wholesale price. As packers reduced kills, we saw strength to the cutout. It jumped $10 on the choice compared to a week ago. So last night's close was just a squeak under 310, and the select is sitting back about $19.25. So good strength, not overly surprising as we get closer to November and some good beef holidays in the U.S., but certainly that smaller kill that we've seen in the U.S. with support to the cutout. Bringing things home to Alberta, really quiet, Shaun, on the cash trade. We did see feedlots asking for 412 delivered on a dress basis, but I didn't see that materialize. There was a little bit of trade at steady money, which is still that 405. And again, I think a lot of cattle being kind of held over into next week or maybe even beyond. And don't forget, Canadian packers were buying for that holiday week. As you mentioned, our Thanksgiving here in Canada is on Monday, and so it was a short week. And so maybe some of these cattle feeders decided, given the strength in the U.S., let's push these cattle another week. But let's talk about carcass weights.
Okay, what are you seeing?
Well, pushing cattle another week. For this past week, we saw steer weights in Canada jump 11 pounds over the previous week, so we're now at 961. That's 3 pounds heavier than a year ago and 12 pounds heavier than the 5-year average. So, the conditions have been superb. Weights have been big, both in the U.S. and Canada, and it sure doesn't look like we're going to deviate from that situation at all. So that's the train we're on.
And how much of that is just, there's market conditions and, the ability, it's been a really good feeding season, but also the genetics. We're able to put more weight on some of these animals than we could when you and I were youngsters in the industry.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I mean, first of all, the overall driver right now is the economics to put the gain on. But as you've just outlined, whether we're talking about genetics or nutrition or, just the overall, management today at feedlot levels, it gives us the ability to do it. But the driver is certainly the economics to put that pound of gain on. Yeah.
What can we expect, do you think, from, packer purchasing behavior here going forward over the next 1 or 2 months? Is it a case of not wanting to be hung with expensive inventory, or do you expect them to be aggressive in terms of some of the forward contracting, or what do you expect here as we get to the back end of 24?
Well, on the beef side, there's no question the packers are going to want to stay with inventory. This is a great demand time as we head into November and December. So I don't think in terms of that piece of it, you're going to see anything, backing off. We'll still see some strength in the cutout. Packers do know, especially south of the border, there's more cattle on feed, And so, they can certainly plan accordingly in terms of inventory and, how much cattle they've got out in front of them. Here in Canada, I think same thing. There's the front end supply is very comfortable. So it's going to be that consistent push and pull, transactional tug of war between both parties, packer and feeder, as we go forward. I don't see that changing. Nobody's going to get caught short here.
Yeah. Now, the last couple of years, feed yards could be really aggressive early in the fall run because a lot of cattle were coming to town because of the drought conditions. This year is it's flipped where the fall run's off to a very slow start, hard to get your feed yard full. What are we seeing in terms of the fall run activity?
Well, it's still been, the yearling run's been very consistent as we've gone through the last few weeks, as it normally would be through September and the first part of this month. But the calf run just getting going in terms of those spot sales. We have had a lot of forward contract sales, but those cattle will be getting delivered here, second half of this month and into November. So we'll still be seeing feedlot deliveries from those forward purchase sales. But the cash sales at the auction markets have been slow to get going, but that's changing as we speak, Shaun. So, special sales starting to show up now, and that'll carry us right through the rest of the run. And we talked about this 2 weeks ago, Shaun. Producers, cow-calf producers, I think, have more options in terms of, what their individual needs, wants might be in terms of now we've got some feed in the stackyard. We've got these great prices. Do we make decisions in terms of, holding something into the new year, selling steers, keeping heifers, if not right through to breeding, certainly until spring. So lots of different decisions, I think, still on the table.
Live cattle exports for August. We got some numbers there.
Yeah, StatsCan came out with the data. We saw another busy month for fed cattle exports in August. They were up 9%. Year to date, Shaun, we're up 44% in our fed cattle exports. That's about 87,000 head more than the same time last year. And every month in 2024, we've seen year-over-year increases in fed cattle trade. So that's been another piece that, even though we maybe haven't been harvesting them here in Canada, we've certainly been exporting them. On the flip side, though, cow exports down 32% in August, and year-to-date we're down 13%. If you remember, we talked back during the Cargill Guelph strike, we saw a lot of, especially cows, both fed cattle and cows being exported, but that certainly has changed here in, the last data is for August, with the exports dropping off pretty substantially.
So are those plants like Hiram, Greeley, Pasco, are they being aggressive on Canadian cattle? Like what is there a market driver there? Why those cattle, we've got an increase in those live cattle exports? Oh,
yeah, certainly. In terms of movement that direction, whether it was through forward contracts or grid options, but certainly it's been a very consistent supply of cattle moving that direction, and I suspect it's not necessarily all spot trade. I think a lot of it would be in the forward contract line or basis contract type business.
Yeah, interesting. Well, hey, Anne, thanks a lot for joining us here this week on the Beef Market Update. Happy Thanksgiving to you. Enjoy that, whatever cut you've got planned for that smoke or that barbecue, enjoy it.
Okay, same to you. Thanks, Shaun.
We'll be right back on RealAg Radio for the RealAg Issues panel right after this.
Get ready for tillage season with the high-speed disc from Brandt. Cut and size residue, create ideal seed beds, and level ruts faster than any other tillage machine. It's a better field finish and fewer passes, so you can stay on schedule, no matter what fall throws at you. And right now, you can get yours with a $12,000 rebate. There's never been a better time to bring your operation up to speed. Visit Brandt.ca for details.
Infuse some energy into your next corporate event, customer meeting, or conference with RealAg Radio, Canada's national agriculture radio show. Create a unique experience at your next event with host Shaun Haney, broadcasting RealAg Radio live on SiriusXM, featuring exciting guests, captivating interviews, and the latest news from the agriculture community. Contact advertising at realagriculture.com or call 587-787-1795 to book your on location with RealAg Radio today.
There's a reason we call it the Corn School. Videos on everything from planter setup to weed control, field trial results, and the latest yield strategies. The Corn School on RealAgriculture.com has the information and advice you need to help you succeed. Brought to you by Pride Seeds and BASF. Corn School episodes are available at cornschool.com, from RealAgriculture.com, or as a podcast in your favorite podcast app. Check out the latest Corn School episode today.
And welcome back to RealAg Radio, here for the RealAg Issues panel here on this Friday. Let's bring in our panelists. Up first, Lyndsey Smith, coming out of Ottawa, Ontario. Lyndsey, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. We had our meeting this week in Calgary, and I am almost recovered, but not. My brain is still a bit mush. So,
yeah, you have a team get-together hangover? Is that what you
That's
have?
right. Yeah, well, because it's so amazing to see everyone in person, get to know each other better, have some downtime together, do some brainstorming. It's fantastic. But we do spend a lot of time, like exactly that, brainstorming and strategic planning and putting all these things. And it's a lot for my brain. And so it takes a little while. And then, of course, the journey home takes a little while, too. So I'm still catching up. But it's nothing coffee can't fix.
I hear you. I heard a podcast yesterday where somebody said that you should only have about 1,000 milligrams of caffeine per day before you start to see health, like adverse effects.
Okay. Mm-hmm. That's the cap.
So I was like, okay, that sounds like a lot. I'm probably nowhere near that. And then they started to talk about how much caffeine is in like coffee.
A cup. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Hey, I've exceeded the world.
Is there if you exceed it by 9, it's bad? There's got to be some sort of
hocus pocus. I don't know. Who came up with this data? Clearly not a coffee drinker. Mm-hmm. Also joining us is Kelvin Heppner, coming out of Altona, Manitoba. Kelvin, how are you doing?
Doing well here, Shaun. The sun is shining, and yeah, like Lyndsey, I think I'm used to working and having a mix of like office and stuff around the yard and in the barn and tractor. And so sitting in a meeting room all day, I can relate with how Lyndsey's feeling. And I hope that we have some, at least something insightful to share today, because, the brain is a little bit tired still.
What's wrong with y'all? It's like you get around people and you just lose all your energy. Like what's going on here?
You're not used to
the
meetings all day. Like
the remote worker?
Yeah.
Like what is going on?
Yeah.
Yeah, he says.
Yeah. Well, although I will say it was really nice to have someone make us breakfast and lunch every day. I missed that.
Yes, that is.
I was when is breakfast being delivered? No one answered. So apparently I'm making it myself.
Making yourself, yeah.
Yeah.
Also joining us here today out of Toronto, Ontario, it is Meagan Murdoch of Hill and Knowlton. Meagan, how are we doing?
Oh, I'm doing well. Better than your team, apparently.
Well, I don't know. You and I don't know.
I mean, they put in a hard week of work, Shaun, and now they can't even chat on the issues panel. I don't know what that says about this team you have.
We are not working hard enough, apparently.
They say it's all about the thinking, but I'm wondering if there was maybe some beers involved that's caused the tiredness.
We were behaved. I have to say that.
Too bad.
We were discussing in a group chat this morning about how old we are. Not LinkedIn was wrong. We are 16 years old this fall.
Real agriculture, not us
Real
personally.
Agriculture is. Well, Kelvin's 16. He looks like it.
Yeah.
And the early days, there would have been, yes, a little bit more tighter foreheads and knocking heads than probably our team had after this week. So,
well, I prefer when you do your team meetings in Toronto, so then I can join. So if we could just make that happen next time, that would be great.
I'll put it on the list. Yeah.
Thank you.
Hey, for agronomically effective dual UAN inhibition, the smart answer is TriBu Nitrogen Stabilizer from Koch Agronomic Services. To learn how its two active ingredients protect UAN from 3 forms of nitrogen loss, visit kochag.ca. That's kochag.ca. Okay, let's get to the issues here of the week. Let's start off. Hurricane Milton, which has hit Florida, ravaged, Kelvin, the Tropicana field where the Tampa Bay Rays play, along with a lot of other pieces of real estate and property and homes, and there has been some lives lost. It's been a wicked couple of weeks here for hurricanes.
Yeah, certainly. It's our thoughts are with everybody in the southeast U.S. part of the continent there, where the hurricanes have been so bad, Helene and now Milton. So it sounds like the worst case scenario may have been avoided here with Milton, but certainly in individual scenarios that may not have been the case. And so, yeah, it's hopefully power can be restored everywhere, and the recovery process can happen quickly.
Yeah, when you get winds at 160 miles an hour, for a kid from Lethbridge, that even sounds high.
Well, then do you think that ballpark was actually built for that? Because I'm not sure any canvas type structure like that. No, that doesn't seem like it's really meant for hurricane.
No, I don't think so. Apparently, they're not going to. They don't think they'll have it ready for next. The Rays will be looking for somewhere to play. Apparently,
they're always looking for somewhere else to play. So Montreal, come on down.
Well, there you go. Look, you heard it here first, everybody. Also, it was interesting on the Farmer Rapid Fire this week. We heard from Mike Shuchuk, who farms in Blaine Lake, and he mentioned that his retailer had already called him about phosphate and concerns. I also saw one of the Blairs from Blair's Ag saying, if you're not paying attention to this hurricane, he tweeted or put on X, if you're not paying attention to this hurricane, you need to be. I'm paraphrasing what was put out there, but we did talk to Josh Linville, and that interview is posted at RealAgriculture.com. Here's what he had to say about the impacts of Hurricane Milton and the fact that it was hitting Tampa Bay, which is where there's a lot of phosphate processing. Here's Josh Linville of StoneX.
Phosphate market that's been incredibly high price. You ask any farmer out there, they will tell you, yeah, phosphate is very high price this year. Now all of a sudden we have these issues like these hurricanes coming through that's reducing supply, reducing production, and doing it just before the start of fall application season. It just made a bad situation worse.
For some reason, the clip played halfway through. Let's listen to the beginning.
This hurricane was incredibly unique because it took a straight west to east path directly into Tampa. And this was the worst case scenario. So this direct impact with all of the phosphate production that resides just outside of Tampa, this could have been the worst case scenario for North America phosphate production. We have already seen a phosphate market that's been incredibly high priced. You ask any farmer out.
So that's Josh Linville of StoneX. And of course, that rest of that interview is posted at realagriculture.com. Lyndsey, with the stickiness of input prices, whether it's phosphate or N, and the commodity market, trending downwards for the most part. This is gonna, farmers got to pay attention in terms of their procurement of fertilizer here and what they need to have happen, and make sure their supply is secured at a price that they can live with.
Well, and this is one of those, I think in the past couple of years, we've usually been so focused on nitrogen and nitrogen being shipped in, and we've had tariffs in the East, and we've always, sort of just assumed that on the phosphorus side that things are good. We just have to deal with prices. Linville, though, he does explain, in talking about the field maybe not being built for this, a lot of these plants are built for the possibility of hurricanes, and the plants themselves, so the actual production may be intact, may be okay, but it's that longer term return of power, of water, and of your people that actually have to, of course, take care of their own homes, their own families first, and then it's just how long it will take for, Florida en masse to really be up and running again. That could create quite a long time that these plants are offline, and that really becomes the big issue, is just how long recovery takes. And of course, anytime there is a disruption, that disruption, of course, slows things down longer then, right? So one day of disruption, it takes a couple more days to get back online and back to where we should be. Phosphorus is, of course, certainly for here in Ontario, fall is a big time for phosphorus applications. So if you didn't have that product in place already, potentially it's going to be either harder to do or just more expensive to do it. But then, of course, we've got to look forward and see what ends up happening for our spring supplies as well. So definitely something to have on the radar, and perhaps you may have to make some other plans depending on how long this disruption goes on for.
Yeah. Well, sure. Go ahead.
Think about transportation as well, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, just getting through the roads. Some of them are just, trees across them and whatnot. But what about we know it's hurricane season. These incidents are occurring more and more and more. But they're fairly predictable in the time of year that they hit. I mean, what about the storage? The preparation for an event like this? Is that not playing a factor in preventing some of the backlogs?
Kelvin?
Yeah, I think so. I think in a lot of cases, the fertilizer that we're applying this fall is already in position or in the supply chain, and there is storage capacity. So it may affect pricing in the market. I'm not sure how much of it depends how long this drags out. I think the recovery will be impressive in terms of how quickly it often is with natural disasters. We expect the worst case scenario as well with how long recovery will take, and people accomplish impressive things in these types of situations. I think so. I'm not sure that this will have that big an impact in the long term. And Lynn kind of talked about this as well in terms of it's about the people and how quickly they can recover to get back to work and that type of thing to get these factories, these facilities back to full capacity. And I think in the meantime, the supply chain it obviously has supplies in it and storage, so that will buffer the effects in the meantime.
Yeah,
I think, further to that point is, and Meagan, it's an excellent observation of part of this conversation we are having and have been having for the past few years is, we shifted over time towards that just-in-time delivery of so many products. And realistically, if hurricane seasons will continue to trend to more often or more severe, we likely do have to build in more storage capacity outside that area so that we're moving product into position sooner. I think that, and Shaun, you heard this certainly on the rapid fire as well, that, as farmers, we tend to want to know, okay, so the price went up. Does it really need to? There's that bit of that trust issue as to, just how high you might be having to pay. So definitely, I think being informed on a situation is that important piece of saying, okay, I know what's going on, so I might make some decisions, but also recognizing, having that conversation of, just how bad is this? Or, can I potentially negotiate a bit of a better deal? I think it's important that you listen to shows like this so you know what's ahead of you there.
Well, I think what we've learned, pandemic to now is like having that, especially when it comes to things like fertilizer, having a really strong relationship with a retailer, a set of retailers is really critical because there's some people that take advantage of these situations, and you don't want to be working with a retailer that is doing those kinds of things. Hey, speaking of fertilizer, nitrogen fertilizer is your farm's number one expense. Farmers are working together through Genesis Fertilizers to solve the problem of high prices and security of supply by planning a state-of-the-art nitrogen plant. Security and earnings through ownership is the solution. Visit Genesis today at genesisfertilizers.com. We'll be right back with more of RealAg Radio with Lyndsey, Meagan, and Kelvin right after this.
Calling all Montana, Dakotas, and northern Minnesota growers. Are you looking for a profitable addition to your farm that can deliver value beyond yield? The new seed omega-3 canola production system can help you unlock a guaranteed path to market with attractive premium opportunities and an active God clause. Contracts include first-in-class agronomy support and free on-farm pickup after harvest. Contracts are available now. Commit early to maximize your opportunity. To learn more, visit omega3canola.com.
What were the issues in your fields this year? Did you do a soil sample? What is your soil sample telling you about some of the nutrient issues that you might be having going into next year? What herbicides did you use? What residues you might be concerned about? What weed issues did you have? What crop residues did you have? How well do you know your fields?
Get the answers to all the questions you have about your pulse crop at the Pulse School on RealAgriculture.com.
Calling all Montana, Dakotas, and northern Minnesota growers, the new seed omega-3 canola production system can help you unlock a guaranteed path to market with attractive premium opportunities, first-in-class agronomy support, and free on-farm pickup after harvest. To learn more, you can visit omega3canola.com. Of course, that's for growers in Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, and Minnesota. omega3canola.com. We got a great panel here today. We got Meagan Murdoch of Hill and Knowlton, Kelvin Heppner, and Lyndsey Smith of RealAgriculture. Meagan, we got a jobs report today. What did StatsCan say?
We did. We saw that there wasn't a lot of movement. A very, very thin improvement, perhaps, since August. So this past month, the economy added nearly 50,000 jobs in September. So the unemployment rate declined for the first time since January. So instead of 6.6, which was its high in August, we're now at 6.5. The right direction, but really that unemployment rate has been holding pretty similarly over the last several months. So, it's still definitely concerning. The economy is not running at the speed that we would want it to be right now. Interestingly, youth and women aged 25 to 54, so my demographic, drove employment gains in the month, and full-time employment saw its largest gain since the spring.
Yeah, full-time employment jumped 112,000 jobs, which was offset by a drop of 65,000 in part-time work. Kelvin, I think people would look at that as pretty strong.
Yeah, this is similar, though, to the CPI report in the U.S. this week, where the headline appears strong and the details are actually a lot more mixed and even oppose the headline, as a lot of this drop so Meagan mentioned the first drop in unemployment since January, from 6.6 in August to 6.5% in September. A lot of that was apparently driven by participation in the labor market dropping in youth, in the 15 to 19-year-old category. And so if you look at the unemployment rate for the 25 to 54-year-old range, that unemployment rate actually rose by 0.1 of a percentage point in September versus August. And so the details here are a lot more mixed. The Bank of Canada still is expected to cut rates by 50 basis points here over the October and December decisions. But the details, devil's in the details here again with this report, just like it was with the CPI report in the U.S. this week too, where mixed signals as to what the Federal Reserve should be doing in the coming decisions.
And Kelvin, it's quite seasonal though, right? Like you mentioned the youth not participating as much, but it's back to school. So would you say we should be looking at the longer term trends really?
Yeah, you're right. I think that's the case with all of these reports. And I think the bank or Stats Canada has a challenge here in terms of we hear all these anecdotal stories about young people having trouble finding jobs. When do they count as participating in the labor market versus not? That definition, I think, is something that is always a challenge in coming up with this type of data.
Well, here's what data is not good. And we're going to talk about the income gap widening here in a second. But Lyndsey, we got the AEM report, the Association of Equipment Manufacturers. And wow, farmers are not buying machinery.
Okay, and so not surprisingly, of course, but I think wow is, and with that emphasis, is important. Just quickly, and we'll amass more of these numbers on realagriculture.com if you want to look, and you can go through the entire report. But U.S. sales of ag tractors decreased 19.2 compared to September of 23. Combines down 40.7. Now, let's keep in mind the combine number is quite volatile, but still 40.7 compared to 2023, huge. Canadian though, percentage. 40.7% compared to 2023. Yes. Canadian sales of ag tractors fell 24.9% compared to last year. And combines, again, a big number, 51.9%.
Those are month to month, not year to date. Those are the month.
No, these are comparisons. Right. But compared to 2020, so the same month in 2023. Yes. AEM likes to report this kind of strangely. You're right. I should clarify that. In that when you go to the full report, you can actually see actual year to date and month by month. So
not looking good there either. So if that's
it is not looking good there either. The trend is very much the same, but yeah, month by month, huge. Now, and I mean, there's a few things we can put together on this, but we often do look at equipment sales as proxy to sort of how overall farmers are feeling about their financial positions. But I think we do have, and we've talked about it, I feel like so many times on this show. And when we talk about economic indicators, those sorts of things, is that things take time, right? So the amount of time that elevated interest rates, the full impact of that will happen over time. And, fallen commodity prices, the full impact of that when input prices did not fall in line, that takes time. So I think, you start to add up some of these things, and realistically, I don't know anyone personally that is super excited about buying equipment right now. Like, yes, that's an anecdote, but I think the numbers back it up. Like, it's not a great time. No one's sitting there on a bunch of money being like, let's buy a combine. No.
Yeah, well, speaking of combine, you look at year to date. Okay, in Canada, year to date combine sales are down 7% compared to this time in 2023, as of the end of September. In the U.S., it's down 21.5%. But like 4-wheel drive tractors, well, that's actually up year to date.
That's the best category. That's
13.8%. So people are buying 4-wheel drive tractors. The U.S. is pretty flat at 1.7%. But it's 2-wheel drive tractors that are like ugly, down 18.5% in Canada and 13.6% in the U.S. So you got to buy seed, right? You got to buy corn seed. You got to buy herbicides. But where when we look at the Farmer Rapid Fire, farmers are looking at how do I got to look at my costs and figure out what I can and can't do. And with the interest rate situation, if you got to finance some of the stuff you're not paying with cash, that's a factor as well. I think Lyndsey's hit on it, Kelvin. This is a bit of an indication about how farmers feel about profitability right now.
Yes, it certainly is, and I think in some ways we might say it's there's a lag here in terms of realization of where we're at and the numbers showing. I think we've been talking about this for months already, but I think that this is also what the equipment companies, the manufacturers, have been talking about for months as they've announced layoffs or told employees that they're not needed anymore. As we've seen hundreds, thousands of people laid off by the manufacturers as they're looking to right size their inventory and their supplies to match this, and that means that they're likely trying to keep the prices where they are. But that's why we've seen Deere and AGCO and C&H, all of these companies downsizing their workforces. And in their earnings reports, they've been talking about 15-20% declines in sales over the last couple of quarters as well. So yeah, I think these AEM numbers that are out this week are further supporting, underlining that this is unfolding as was expected.
Here's some other numbers for you. The income gap is the widest since StatsCan started tracking in 1999. Okay, so we look at the bump that the Conservatives have had in the polls, and when they started talking about affordability, this is some data that supports the why of that. Okay, so Toronto Dominion Bank hasn't had a very good week, but they did provide some commentary on this story. They pointed to a recent report from the Office of Parliamentary Budget Officer, which highlighted how rising inflation and tighter monetary policy has eroded purchasing power, particularly among lower income households since 2022. So the report found that households in the highest income quintile have seen the most intense rise in income before taxes, 32%. Okay. Now the challenge is, the lower income and middle income households were more likely to take a hit from higher borrowing costs and were less likely to see gains in their saving and investment accounts outstrip interest paid, since they tend to have less disposable income to set aside. Meagan, this is, I sent the text to somebody this morning. This is chum in the water for the Conservatives when you see this kind of data.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, the fact that, higher income.
I think we may have lost Meagan. Lyndsey, what's your reaction to that report?
Right. So I do like the term chum in the water. I think that's a really good one in that, I would say, so if we can really look at this from a political lens, less of a person lens, but from the political lens, we've had all this, and we're going to cover some of it, of course, politicking happening right now, bills, is this government going down, et cetera. And frankly, Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives want an election as soon as possible, because over time, this discussion on affordability, the carbon tax, et cetera, the longer that sort of continues, or we don't have an election, the more chance there is of that perhaps shifting away of the focus. This puts it right back to exactly where the Conservatives want the focus. So realistically, even if this government does survive or prorogues and comes back, et cetera, even with all that, we still potentially, have some news here that the Conservatives can bring that focus right back to what they want this next election to be about. And it definitely gives them firepower to keep on message, to keep reminding, Canadians as to what they've been through and how bad it is and how they're the solution according to them. So it definitely is, it plays right into what honestly, maybe the Conservatives really needed a little bit to keep things back on the page of what they want, seeing as we are potentially looking at maybe an election call immediately, but it could still be another year.
And farming is risky. Farming is tough. If it was easy, more people would do it. It's not a super, it's not low-hanging fruit when it comes to what do you want to do in your career. But I think it's important that in agriculture we keep in mind about how the rest of Canada is doing economically and financially, and agriculture is in for some tough, profitable times, as we were just talking. But overall, we've been on a reasonable run here, as we've seen, especially in the land price. If you've got capital assets invested in land, then you're feeling pretty good in that regard. Kelvin, the question is, what do we do about this? Okay, because I think a lot of Canadians look to the government to fix this, whether it's the Liberals or the Conservatives. We need to fix this. Do we really want the government to be fixing this, or what role do we want them to play?
To me, this type of report, this data from StatsCan, is an indictment of what our government's direction has been the last decade, maybe even longer, as policies that were meant to support the middle class. Remember what the Liberals ran on? Remember what Trudeau talked about? Building the middle class. This data from StatsCan today or yesterday shows that the middle class has had it tough. And so to go back to this gap in income, the difference in disposable income between the top 40% of households in Canada and the bottom 40% is now 47 percentage points. That's the largest gap ever recorded by StatsCan since they started collecting this info in 1999. And so that means the middle class has been eroded. The top end has become heavier and the bottom end has become heavier. And so to me, this is an indictment of the political direction and policy decisions that have been made in Ottawa. And I know some of this is global as well in terms of inflation and interest rates being a global phenomenon. But to me, inflation and interest rates, they benefit people who own assets and cost people who don't own assets, who pay rent, who pay for borrowing money, that type of thing. It's the haves versus the have-nots, and that gap has become even bigger here. And so to me, further to Lyndsey's point, this is, I think, why the electorate is so frustrated with this government and why the electorate is looking for change. And I guess we should be pushing policymakers to in that direction, but at the same time to take this type of thing seriously and not just deal with the cheap, petty political things and actually make structural changes to how the Canadian tax system works and how the incentives are structured by government.
So, Meagan, you get the last thought here before we take a commercial break, but is this, the government looks at this and says, this is exactly why we need to make the changes to capital gains tax regime?
Yeah, I mean, they're trying to do anything that they can, at least that's sellable at the doors when they're going around neighborhood store knocking. But I think it's beyond the electorate to understand that a lot of these are macroeconomic challenges. This is monetary policy trying to keep inflation down by increasing interest rates. And those interest rates have really hurt those most vulnerable. But for anyone who understands it, it's not quick government policy action or a new government that's going to change this overnight. So it's politically beneficial to the Conservatives, but people will realize in a year, 2 years, 3 years, even under a new government, that we will likely still have a lot of these challenges. So I think that's interesting. And it's honestly just bad timing for a government that's a bit long in the tooth.
I don't think this is about income redistribution, that type of thing, Shaun. That's where the unintended consequences often end up being bigger than what the benefits are. So to me, this is more about cutting red tape and competitiveness and productivity growth, focusing on all those types of things.
Yep. Yeah. Competitiveness, that old, yes. Well, we can rant about that. We got to take a break. Hey, this segment was brought to you by Pioneer brand canola with Optimum Glide, the highest yielding glyphosate tolerant trait on the market. What's next in canola happens right here. Go to pioneer.com/Canada to find out more. We'll be back with more of the RealAg Issues panel right after this.
Advanced canola trait technology is here. And it's soon to be the talk of the town. Optimum Glide delivers excellent yield potential and agronomic trait performance. Improved crop safety. Enhanced weed control. And a wider window of application. You're going to want to see this. Learn more at OptimumGlide.ca.
Peter Johnson at WheatPete, RealAgriculture.com. I'm the host of The Word, and I love doing The Word. I love the questions. I love the challenges. I love having to apply agronomics to all over the globe and areas outside of my normal jurisdiction. Also, I love the feedback the most, where growers challenge me, tell me about their plot results, help me to learn. The Word, absolutely the best part of my day.
And welcome back to RealAg Radio for the RealAg Issues panel. Meagan Murdoch of Hill and Knowlton out of Toronto. We've got Kelvin Heppner, Lyndsey Smith of RealAgriculture. What about Brandt Agricultural Products? They're joining us here as well. The Brandt high-speed disc is made to manage residue, condition seed beds, level ruts, and reclaim wetlands in the most challenging of conditions. Lead the field with a lineup of versatile high-speed discs from Brandt and achieve better results with every pass. And receive up to a $12,000 rebate. For a limited time, visit brandt.ca to find out more. We had a PBO report out about the carbon tax, I guess correcting a mistake that was made previously. What did this report tell us, Meagan?
Well, first off, both Liberals and Conservatives are holding this report up, saying that it proves their point about the carbon tax, whether they're for it or against it. But essentially, the report says that people in the provinces where the carbon tax is in place, so all provinces excluding Quebec and British Columbia, will see a net gain, receiving more from the Canadian carbon rebate than the total amount they pay in federal fuel charge. So they looked at things like they compared the net cost of the federal carbon tax and the related goods and services tax, and then compared that against the amount received from the Canadian carbon rebate, and came to the conclusion that Canadians will get back more. However, in the Conservatives' side, and what they're flagging from this report is that the loss of employment due to the fuel charge, the average household will get back less money than what they pay towards the carbon tax. And ultimately, there will be a negative impact on the federal budget because of that loss of employment, and that investment income will actually increase the deficit by about $1.5 billion this year and $4 billion by 2030, 2031. So it's a mixed bag. Hard to tell who wins in this case.
Yeah. There's nothing more confusing than carbon tax math.
Well, so Calvin, go ahead.
It's all about direct and indirect costs here, and the PBO analysis and the Liberal side of things likes to only count the direct costs to households. So you have households paying the consumer carbon tax, you have corporations, you have businesses, you have massive employers paying the consumer carbon tax, and then you have that money, those rebates going back to households only. So to me, the direct cost, the indirect costs to households are not shown in this math. And that's like Meagan alluded to, decreases in employment, decreases in productivity. This week or the last week, we've heard about municipalities upping their property taxes because they have such high increases in their fuel bills due to the carbon tax. And so there's all these indirect costs. We talk about it when the railways pay the carbon tax. We talk about it with trucking and all these other places, manufacturing, heating different facilities where there isn't an exemption. The indirect costs add up, and that's where the PBO and the Liberal perspective here often doesn't include that direct cost, and because it's not necessarily borne at the household level, and this is focusing on the household impact here with these numbers.
Yeah, well, I want to talk about C-282. We had a rally on the Hill this week. Some farm groups participated, some bipartisan support from some MPs. We had former Ag Minister Marie-Claude Bebeau, who's the Revenue Minister now, Even she participated. Somebody else also that did was Agriculture and Agri-Food Minister Lawrence Macaulay, who was asked about why the Liberals were dragging their feet from the bloc on 282. This is the Take Supply Management Off the Table in Future Trade Negotiations private members bill. Here's what Minister Macaulay had to say.
Supporting supply management. Today with my colleagues on the Hill, it's important to note, Mr. Speaker, that supply management was initiated by a Liberal government just over 50 years ago. Then we supported supply management. Today we support supply management. Being a dairy farmer in Prince Edward Island, I'm fully aware of the values of supply management, and I urge the Senate to pass Bill 282. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Lyndsey, this private members bill, which we kind of thought would sort of be like, hey, there would be a vote in the House and people would get, it'd be, get your name on the record as far as where you stand on this, has turned into a pretty hot potato political issue as it's, we're still waiting for the Senate to decide what they're going to do with it.
Well, and, who would have thought that it would become you have to pass this or we're taking down the government bill. Now, I'm not saying that's exclusively so, but the Bloc Québécois has made this one of their sort of, ultimatum bills for the federal government to say that if this doesn't get passed, that they are going to start those conversations of what the future of this government means. And so realistically, though, I think this bill is problematic. It is really, when it came about, everyone sort of looked at it and went, okay, so supply managed sectors on one side, trade dependent on the other. This is why it's not a good idea. We've talked about it many times on this show as to why this bill even had to be created. What does it actually do? And now we're to the point where we are on an absolute tight timeline to actually get this bill passed. And everybody's saying, this is super important, have to do it. And it's so important that our trade minister is asking for the Senate to pass it. And really, it's all about keeping this current government actually in power. So who would have thunk? Either way, I'm still going to go on the record saying it's a stupid bill, and everyone can come at me if you want. I don't think it's really what we should be spending our time on right now. Like when you look at, and Kelvin's got a great post that has put all the private members' bills on a list as to all the things that are in the works right now in this government, and this is the one apparently that we're going to be pushing through and making sure happens, and we're all focused on, and we're going to potentially bring down the government over. There's a lot of other stuff going on, and I don't see that this is the bill that really should be being pushed through, for one thing. And for another, in general, we thought this was let's call everybody's bluff, see where they stand. Everybody said, hey, we love supply management, let's move on. It's turned into way more than that.
Kelvin, one of the things we may see is a softening of the verbiage in an amendment that would basically soften the language, and then it's left up for interpretation depending on who the government is and who they're probably negotiating with in a trade deal.
Yeah, that's where we're at right now. This bill is at the committee stage in the Senate, and we know that the chair and deputy chair of the Senate committee, there's 12 members of the committee, and the chair and deputy chair and two others are opposed to this legislation. They voted against it at second reading. We don't know where the other 8 all stand necessarily on it. And that's one thing that could happen here is if an amendment is introduced and then it has to be debated, if it gets approved, it really delays things. Either way, though, the amendment process, if that happens, could really delay this past the October 29th deadline that the Bloc has set here and kick this down the road. If the committee would approve an amendment, it would have to go back to the House of Commons, similar to Bill C-284, the carbon tax on farms bill. So there's potential here for gamesmanship to delay this, and that's where the Bloc and the SM that were Hill yesterday are and I should note all parties except for the Conservatives were represented at the microphone as well. Alistair McGregor from the NDP and the Greens were also as participating in the rally. That's where it would have to go. That's why they're urging the committee to not play these types of games, but there is a possibility of an amendment, something like where they change the word must to should, that type of thing, where we get into semantics of legislation and it has to be interpreted down the road like you alluded to, Shaun.
Yeah, Meagan, when we start to do that, my question is, maybe I'm just not a seasoned enough policy person, but what's the point? If it doesn't have hard and fast language and it's wishy-washy, why have it?
Well, it's funny when Kelvin said there's a potential for gamesmanship here. I think we can just agree that there's gamesmanship here. Usually we refer to the time of the parliamentary calendar around May or June as the silly season. We are officially in silly season, folks. There's talk of the government being taken down. There's talk of a proroguement by the government to try to hold power for a little longer. It is, this is all about politics. This is about what you can say at the door in the next election. Can you say that a party supported or did not support supply management? That is all that is at afoot here. I actually think it's really terrible for trade negotiations, this bill. It's not thinking about what this signals to our trade counterparts, so that when the trade ministers of the future go to the table, there's actually a law in place or, a piece of regulation in place in Canada that prevents them from negotiating or at least holding that lever at the table. I think it's short-sighted, it's silly, it's completely political. So if this language change slightly weakens it, so that all parties can unanimously support it, and therefore other parties cannot claim that they did not support supply management, then that's, I think, a win for everyone, but it's entirely short-sighted and a real shame.
Yeah, I want to make it clear, too. I've had a few people have asked why we haven't had representatives from the supply management industry to talk on behalf of 282. Last week we had Nathan Finney from CCA talking about why they're against it. We have reached out, and we're trying to get interviews lined up. So I just want to make sure everyone knows we are trying to get the other side of the story as well. Hey,
yeah, and it's important to say that we're not saying that the idea is wrong, but a piece of legislation that ties a trade minister's hands or prevents them from publicly negotiating in a way that still protects supply management, that's the challenge here.
Good point. Thanksgiving this weekend, best holiday of the year. Kelvin, I know that you and I don't necessarily see eye to eye on this, but what's the family doing for Thanksgiving this weekend, or what's your favorite part about it?
Thanksgiving, I enjoy just the time, the reminder to be thankful and grateful for everything that we are blessed with, and I enjoy the time that we get to spend with family. I know we've done some of this stuff last weekend. We had a family football game in the afternoon with my siblings and parents, and it's always good memories there. So this week, I think we're actually going to be spending more time at the hockey rink for practices and exhibition preseason games than family stuff. But it's certainly it is a good holiday. It's just nowhere close to Christmas, Shaun.
Crazy talk. For all of our American listeners, Thanksgiving. Wait a minute. What is?
Wait a tick. Canadian
Thanksgiving. Yeah, and maybe that's why you enjoy it so much, Shaun. You get to celebrate it twice here.
You get to do the double dip. There's nothing better than
double dip.
Lyndsey, Thanksgiving. Why?
Well, okay. But I thought we were going to have an entire segment devoted to stuffing and cranberry sauce and whatever. Turns out it's I get 2 minutes. Come on now. Anyway, so.
Quicker than that.
Okay. I love it. Turkey's amazing. Leftovers are the best. And no pressure and gifts. This is why it's the best. Enjoy your stuffing, everyone.
It's also one of the best sports weekends of the year.
It's a good one for that too.
It is a really good sports weekend. Okay. Meagan, how about you?
Well, I totally agree with Kelvin. It's a nice time to remember what we're thankful for, but, I'm really just here for the stuffing. And don't be putting weird things in my stuffing either. I don't want berries. I don't want nuts. I don't want seeds. I just want bread, savory, onion, maybe a bit of celery. Just don't mess with a good thing. That's my point of view on stuffing, if you were wondering what it was.
Yeah, I was.
I was sitting here
I'm
what Meagan thinks about stuffing.
It's got to be the best holiday out there. I like that it's actually not focused on gift giving and the like and shopping like it might be for our friends in the US, but it's a little bit more focused on food.
Oh, there's so many reasons why it's the best holiday of the year. We're going to be smoking some meat, watching some college football on Saturday. Like I said, it's a great sports. It's a great schedule for those of you that follow college football. Playoff baseball, NHL has started. The weather's gorgeous. How do you go wrong with Thanksgiving? Meagan, have yourself a great Thanksgiving weekend.
Thank you. You guys too.
Kelvin, enjoy the hockey rink.
Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
And Lyndsey, the Senators are 1-0, so that's a reason.
So let's just call it a season. Let's call it a season. We're good.
Same with the Flames. It's like the game we win all year. If you have any feedback on today's show, we'd love to hear from you. Send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com, or you can call that Real Ag feedback line, 855-776-6147. I am off next week. You are in the hands of Lyndsey Smith, the very capable hands, and please, everybody, tune in, provide her with feedback, challenge her, and have yourselves a great week. Thanks, everybody, for getting real and getting connected with RealAg Radio, and we'll chat again when I get back, but you'll be here next week. Cheers, everybody.